Good evening all. Thank you very much. It's great to see so many people turn out for containers. It's really good. Thanks Matt for inviting me, by the way. Appreciate it. So I'm really here just to talk to you guys about our journey. So really from we're a startup, and we've kind of adopted containers to really help us aid our speed to market. And really I just want to talk you through the journey we've had so far. Hopefully it'll be of interest. So who are Quill? So essentially our mission is to build the most compelling content experiences for brands. What that actually means is we deliver bespoke, tailored, high quality content across a large number of topics in a large number of languages in a large number of formats. So essentially if you need that blog post in Korean, we're the people to call. Clients include Shop Direct, Star Travel, LA Fitness, etc, etc. Go on to the next slide. Really what's interesting and why I'm here to talk is actually all of this is underpinned by technology. My remit and the team's remit is to build a software platform to achieve this at a global scale. And we've chosen to use containers to help us do this. So just to give a bit of context, thanks Matt. So as many startups happen, the software part of the business kind of grew out of simple requirements to support the business. And then back in 2014, there was VC investment, which really helped the business start to think about growing. At that point, September, I actually joined as CTO. And I came in to really find that we had essentially a large single Ruby on Rails application. And just to give you sort of an idea of that, so the article class was north of 600 lines of code and a test suite that takes greater than an hour. So not uncommon in Ruby on Rails apps, I'm sure, but it's certainly it was a challenging situation. So clearly that wasn't what we needed to do. We faced a monolith monster, so we had to think about actually how do we sort this out. So we faced a very brittle monolithic application. Early on in my tenure, we were trying to build features, and what we found was that it was just very challenging. We would have regression issues, and it would get slower and slower because the nature of a monolithic application and the way it's been structured. Of course, at this time, we have an ever-growing list of requirements. It's a hugely fast-moving competitive landscape. Just to give you some context, our two kind of major competitors have between them raised about $150 million worth of venture capital. I was actually looking yesterday, and one of the competitors actually has 20 open positions for software engineers. So there's a lot of backing there. And as you can see there, today we are 6 devs and 1 DevOps. Now we can do a lot with small teams, and I'm a firm believer. But just to give you some context of what we're facing. So this was kind of where we're at. It was. We needed to deploy things, and it was pretty painful. Actually, unfortunately, Pedro, our DevOps guy, is not here tonight. He was due to be here, but he could tell you a lot of stories about the challenges we faced. But we knew that we had to change this, so we actually drew up a plan, and we started this by really focusing on what are our goals. How do we improve the situation? First and foremost, enhance speed to market. We need to be able to deliver features quickly and robustly, and that really involves the ability to build features without tripping over each other's toes, and also hot deployments. We need to be able to deploy constantly and not have to have downtime and notification windows and all that sort of horrible stuff that can slow you down. We were clear that we needed to provide a fault-tolerant and scalable architecture. We want to do this globally. We have big ambitions for the business, so again, that had to be part of that. A key thing that everywhere I go, and is ensure tech ops is a first-class citizen. It's so vital that you know what's happening with your software, who's doing what, why, and when, and what's working and what is not working. And again, so we built that as part of our requirements. And then finally, but certainly not least on the list, was focus on developer productivity and happiness. Any business, when you have developers, they're an expensive, resource, and you want to make sure that they're happy and delivering code. And when they're trying to deploy things and batting their heads against all manner of weird bugs, that's not the best use of their time. So our approach was to adopt a microservice architecture. Now I won't talk about it tonight. That's plenty of material for another talk. But what I do want to talk about is kind of the infrastructure we needed to really support the build, ops, and deployment to enable this new way of working for us. So, looking at our solution. And I'm a huge proponent of open source, and it's safe to say that everything I talk about now we couldn't have done if the open source community didn't exist in its current form. So yeah, it's fantastic. But really, I mean, I guess first and foremost for this talk and for this meetup is around the the container tooling. And so what we've adopted, and bear in mind we are a small startup, so we're not looking at enterprise scale, is Doku. And hopefully you guys have come across it. If not, I'd certainly recommend you look it up. But essentially it is a Heroku-like deployment capability without Heroku's cost. Apologies, no one from Heroku in here, I hope. But you know, there's well documented that Heroku it's incredibly productive for developers, and it gets incredibly expensive. So we've been able to utilise Doku. Some of the great features is open source. It's Docker-centric, so actually what it outputs is Docker containers, which are very useful further down the stack. It's cloud agnostic. I believe you just need to have Ubuntu 14 installed. So again, you know, usable across all clouds. And it's extensible. So you can put in pre- and post-commit hooks, which is very useful for registering a service, location services, and other bits and pieces. So Doku is certainly front and centre in terms of our tooling. But it's also worth noting that we had another number of other key tools which really are needed to glue the whole thing together. Consul by the HashiCorp guys, which is another fantastic piece of kit, written in Go. We use that for service discovery and central configuration. HA proxy, battle tested. That's all part of the routing and load balancing infrastructure that we use. InfluxDB, which is a very interesting time series database, again written in Go, goes very popular obviously with these sort of things. So we use that for metric tracking. And then a couple of paid services, but very worth noting, Pingdom. All our services have health check endpoints, and so actually we utilise Pingdom to effectively do that in a single dashboard, which has been really, really good. And then finally Papertrail for aggregate logs. We spent a while trying to go through the various logging products out there with mixed success, but once we actually locked onto Papertrail, it has been excellent because it does one thing and one thing very well, and that allows you to search aggregate logs. So again, highly recommend you check out all of those because they're really, really useful tools. Thanks, man. Okay, so I guess looking at the results. So just to talk you through our deployment process as we have today. Essentially, Aldo at the front here, not to embarrass him, but he's part of the team. He will log onto our deployment dashboard, select the Git repo of the service, add environmental variables, choose a number of instances, and you click. Thanks, Matt. And from a developer perspective, you know, by all means, I'm not, you know, speak to Aldo afterwards, he can, without me in earshot, and he can tell you the truth. I'm a developer, you know, by background, and that's what I think is the way to be. As a CTO, I'm happy because developers are able to ship code really, really fast, and it's done in a automatic, scalable, manageable way, which I think is fantastic. So just to kind of peel back the hood and tell you what's going on. So what we actually do, so when you click that button, we actually we deploy a mutable infrastructure, so we build new VMs, and then as part of that, that has Doku as part of that, and then the application code is deployed into containers via Doku, which is essentially git push commands underneath the hood. And then that will then, in terms of the Doku hooks, that then triggers DNS setup and service registration with Consul. And then Consul will trigger the update to HA proxy, which then configures all the routing load balancing. And then finally, the logging and metric services are configured for Papertrail and InfluxDB. So then we have a fully managed stack that is operationally manageable and set up to be able to scale out, has fault tolerance, etc., etc. All the kind of things that we were trying to achieve. Cool. So how's it going? So that's the interesting point, I suppose. So as I say, just to sort of recap, you know, feature development was painful with the monolithic app. You know, as I say, we had regression. It was difficult to deploy. You know, just to show you sort of to ship, we had to coordinate team leads within the business. We had to notify clients, and then we had to have downtime, which is just not a good place to be at all. And then today, so we're shipping features several times a day with no downtime. We've deployed north of 15 new services, and probably actually it's nearer 20 now, which is all new features, which is all allowing us to attack the market and progress the business. We're also shipping new features without regression. Again, that's probably more to do with the architecture, but equally containers are enabling us to do this. They are an enabler. And I think what's really neat and kind of I've really been pleased with is that it's a standard way to deploy across languages. So we have a mixed team of Ruby, Go, and Node developers, and they all deploy the same way via our Docker and our deployment mechanism. So it doesn't matter what language you're proficient in, if you need to deploy a service, you know exactly what to do, which is, again, it just saves time, cuts friction down, and generally makes the developers happy. So, in final thoughts, as you say, obviously I'm looking at it from a small scale and recognise Kubernetes, and there's lots of very good tools out there for big orchestration. But for a startup, trying to get used to using containers and really optimising for shipping, Docker's been absolutely fantastic. But more seriously, looking at containers, thanks for that. What they've given us: easy, repeatable polyglot deployments, as I mentioned. Cloud portability. Really, this is a big one for me because I've deployed applications across most of them, or all of the major cloud stacks, and there's times when I've wanted to be able to move for various reasons, be it cost, be it features, and I'm very nervous about deep tie-ins. I used to work for Microsoft, and I was on the original Azure, and my first startup was on Azure, and the amount of pain we got because we tightly coupled ourselves to Azure was unbearable. So, burnt and lesson learned. And so for me, what Docker gives you, or what containers give you, is that portability across clouds, across local machines. And I guess that's the final point, really, is that it gives us the ability to run actual production code locally, which has actually been extremely useful. So being able to export a Docker image down and then run it on a local dev machine, which is, essentially it's a cast iron version of what code is running on the server, has given us a lot of flexibility and a big boost that we didn't really anticipate when we were doing it, but we've absolutely appreciated it since then. There's one more slide. And then just kind of a final thoughts, learnings that we have. The technical operations is complex. It's a different way of managing things. Containers do allow you to ship a lot of things, and so you have to be aware that you need tools to support this, and the team need to understand this, and we've had to do that as a team and understand the various tools we need to do to debug what's going on with the system. Patching and upgrading challenges, stuff that we're still working through, and we're obviously, I'm very keen on what's happening in the ecosystem to try and help us solve these problems. And it's really a note for me, and it's kind of this not invented here syndrome. It is very DIY what we've done. I think it's very effective, but it will have a lifetime. And I'd certainly recommend if you're larger scale, things like Kubernetes, Docker Compose or other tools in that space, you want to be aware of them and understand those, because they may be able to help you solve some of the problems in a better way than kind of what we've done so far. And that's it. Hopefully that was interesting.